To be transparent, I don't think we're loosening up. Engineering teams are still expensive to leave idle, right? And that time boxing is important, not only because you can research forever, but also because a bias towards action, especially in this market, is going to be generally helpful. Let's talk about a time box from 15 years ago versus a time box now, right? A time 15 years ago looked like, okay, well, I think this is the right problem to solve. Let me go talk to 50 potential users in different user segments. Let me analyze everything that they're saying, and I will use that to kind of build a PRD that I think will hit all these points, and I'll work with UX and I'll work with engineering to put something out there, right? Fundamentally, that isn't changing. But what's changing is think about where you're spending time there. Doing those 50 user research studies, understanding the signal between those 50 user research studies, that used to take a long time. And now, where AI is helping us is that signal extraction from those 50 user studies is happening much faster. And so what that creates is, in essence, it creates more time to do some of that. Hi, my name is Saurabh Sharma. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at U.com. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I'll start this conversation with a tool that I've been very impressed by in this podcast. I get the opportunity after like almost 8 years now of doing it, of seeing like different tech trends. And when I first started, it was like augmented reality, virtual reality. And then a couple years later, it was crypto. And so now I'm getting a lot more into like AI. And I think this trend is a lot more of a seismic shift when it comes to adoption and how we do things and moving into the future. And so I've gotten a little bit of of a head start on like where to look and, learn more about how to apply AI to my workflows. At my current role, we use Glean. And when at first glance, I was like, oh, okay, it's like whatever, it's not like Claude, so it's probably can't be that useful. But then it allows me to it's like if a really powerful AI model had access to every like company document, Slack thread, email thread, and like Gong call, and it's able to like pull relevant context from across the company. For the first time in my career, I could just ask something to go source Gong calls, pull from the transcript, and then put it in the context of a lot of different data sources and like Slack threads to quickly get up to speed. Kind of like having your own chief of staff. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about like your role at U and what you feel like the macro trend is of how we could work now with this new technology.
Yeah, great questions. We've at U.com, we've seen a lot of the evolution of this AI wave. I totally agree. It's more of a seismic shift than some of the other moves that we've seen in industry. U.com, I was at Google, I was at OpenSea during a lot of the crypto revolution. And it's just so clear that my time at Google really coincided with the rise of mobile. And that was clearly a seismic shift looking back at it 15, 17, 20 years later now. And it feels like AI is just as big, if not bigger, in fundamentally changing how we work and how we view the world. And we've seen a lot of that over the last few years at U.com. So U.com started off as consumer AI search, and we quickly saw that a bigger opportunity to make a difference was on the enterprise side of things, right? And what we started to see was people saying, you've built a great consumer AI search. Can I use some of that functionality? Can you use some of that functionality to help me? I have this problem that I need more AI sophistication to do. So we started to build a solutions unit at U.com. And we started to see a lot of the types of workloads that companies are starting to think about and that AI would unlock for them. What we also started to see was a lot of what people wanted, as you've described, is they need to use their own documents, right, to be able to really make AI work for them. And so we started an infrastructure group as well that focused on being able to search through your own documents, that type of thing. It very quickly became apparent to us that in addition to your own documents, what's also typically helpful is to pull in data from the rest of the world as well. pull in data from the web in different parts of the web, right? Let me give you an example, right? Let's say that you're a retailer, right? Business intelligence, market intelligence is critical to be able to understand trends, right? I'll give you an example. We work with a retailer that didn't have the market intelligence to understand that pickleball was taking off. And by the time they realized it, 9 months to 12 months later, they had probably lost a reasonable chunk of revenue to their competitors because they really didn't understand that pickleball had taken off, right? And so they came to us and said, we want to upgrade our market intelligence, our business intelligence to be able to capture these trends better. And what that required was really three things. One is to be able to understand their own internal data. What is happening at point of sales? What is happening in their supply chain? What is moving faster in their inventory? Number two, mix it with external data, right? What is happening with their competitors, right? What are their competitors selling quickly that they may not have in their inventory, right? What is happening sentiment-wise on the internet as well that they should be aware of? And then number three, so those are critical pieces of infrastructure. You need deep infrastructure to be able to understand their unique data. You need deep infrastructure to be able to understand the web at a deeper layer than search engine or general search API will provide. You need to be able to bring those things together as well in a way that makes sense. And what we realized is a lot of companies, for some companies, that's enough. If you're an AI native company, having that index of data and we bring that index together is enough. But if you're a non-AI native company, if you're a retailer, you need a solutions layer, an intelligence layer on top of that, because you don't have the skill set to go deep on that. Now, the reason I'm bringing all this up is that this is a type of thing that we see over and over again, right? Where customers have difficult real world problems that they are looking to see if AI can give them a head start, and joining their data with the data from the web and perhaps a solutioning layer if they need that has been where we've found to find tremendous value for customers. And really, we're just at the start of this, right? I think that a lot of companies are starting to understand. Every company now understands the horizontal value addition that AI provides, right? If you have Claude or if you have ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever it might be, it's going to help you write emails faster. It's going to help you get a customer brief before you enter a sales meeting more rapidly. It's going to do all that 20% productivity boost that everybody is seeing. The smartest companies, the companies that are spending the most time thinking about AI at the next level, are starting to understand that there's way more that is far more critical to their core competency that AI can unlock. And we're really excited to work with many of those companies, a lot of their unique challenges.
And also where I think oh man, I'm gonna sound like a idiot tech bro right now, but I can't think of another word. But like the alpha, like
Mhm.
this new technology versus different technology, is that back in the day, like a year ago, right? There was this big put. There's always like this big push at every company I go to. Like we need to have a really like deep wiki. We need to document everything.
Mhm.
But no matter what, the bandwidth is always having time to document things effectively. And then two, it's never going to happen just because it's just hard to police that. And a lot of decisions happen in Slack threads, email threads, and being able to maybe start with like a document and then the technology is able to look at recent Slack threads of maybe where that like look for Slack threads where that document was linked, and then
Yeah.
see like look at any conversations about that, and be able to pull in that extra context of like here's like the hallway conversations that happened around this piece of work. Reminds me of like Westworld season 3. The whole concept is there's this AI supercomputer, and the big bad guy made it in that season, and there was a scene with him like blackmailing some dictator in a South American country with information where he had this like earpiece where he was getting like all this context to be able to like have like god levels of prescience to like scare this dictator into stopping or doing a certain behavior. And that's not science fiction anymore. Like you
Mhm.
can, like you said before, like a sales meeting, you could pull all gong calls related. Like I've used it for all gong calls related to a customer, and I prompted it to be like how, like any collect evidence on like how they feel about us, collect evidence about potential churn, and like having that before going into the interview, you get to skip like that preamble part of the customer interview where you're like, well, tell us about yourself. And like they probably already said it to other product teams in the past if they're a longtime customer. Like you already know who
Yeah.
they are, and you could just jump into like asking them questions like to be more efficient. And it's almost like you have like that little supercomputer in your ear to be able to get that context.
Yeah, there's so much there. I'll try to unpack some of it. Alpha is the right word, actually. That is the word that actually comes up. We talk to, obviously, it's a word that's coming out of financial services, but we've seen that not only in financial services, but in other places. Folks are looking at AI no longer as just a productivity boost, but a market edge. And I think that many companies understand that it's an exploration, right? Now, the world understands that 20% general productivity boost pretty well now. But that next level boost, people understand that there's an exploration to be had and are looking for that as well. I think your documentation point is right on, right? You can document everything, but then you become the DMV. It's a bloated, slow organization. And the reality is you don't need to. The challenge has been the data is already there. To your point, it's in Slack, it's in Google Drive, it's in your CRM or whatever it might be, but it's there in an unstructured way that traditionally has been difficult to put together, but AI helps you create those linkages far more effectively as well. I didn't watch Westworld season 3. I stopped at season 2, but I really like your analogy. I think that prescience, I fully expect a world within a year or two at most where that AirPod is not just a bilateral communication device, it is an active AI companion, right? And you already see some of this starting to happen. You hear about job interviews where people are using AI to respond. It's going to become faster, and it's going to be able to do that type of omnipresence that you described in real time. So it's what we see is a pretty fascinating world where AI is becoming more and more critical to establishing alpha in in every at every type of company. The companies that we talk to are absolutely the AI native companies like Windsurf or Amazon or Alibaba, but they're also power companies, financial services companies, cruise lines. We're talking to such a vast variety of customers that are starting to see the benefits at the next level of AI.
Yeah, and priced at a point for now at least where it's widely available to most people. And so once I guess the next few generations, right? Like I'm as of this recording, I'm 31, I'm a millennial. I was doing how to like create search queries in Google in like a computer literacy class when I was in high school. Like maybe we have a 10, maybe not even 10, like 10, 15 year head start from like the next round of students coming through the education system where they're probably going to be learning to default start with these tools. And I'm trying to like simulate, like maybe like we do a little bit of like thinking out loud, like what's going to happen if like we don't like what are like the things that we might be hanging on to, like the sacred cows of like what
Mhm.
work looks like right now that we have to like reinvent about ourselves, knowing that there's kids right now learning or default to using these tools in the first place, and they're going to be in the workforce soon. Like I guess like the question is how do we not become the boomers when like
Yeah,
we're in the leadership roles in like 10, 20 years.
yeah, for sure. It's a great question. One thing that Richard Socher, U.com CEO, mentions is that none of us are going to be ICs anymore, right? We are all going to be managers in the future. And some of us will continue to manage people, but your traditional IC will now be managing a fleet of agents that's doing a lot of work for them. Right? And that future is already here today. A lot of my workflow now is AI assisted as an example, right? As a simple example, many of the emails I write, I will pass through AI to help me with tone or help me with think about the way I want to get to a particular objective in a reasonable way, given a customer situation or whatever it might be, right? That is essentially an example of offloading something that we all know how to do. I could write that perfect email to a customer to diffuse a complex situation, but it might take me an hour to really think through it and get it right. What I found is that email is now 5 minutes away, working with AI to help me understand what it is I'm trying to say, how to frame it correctly, those type of things. And I'll give you another example. We like most companies, we finished up yearly planning at the end of last year, and I decided that I wanted to use AI to help me with it and just understand, would it be helpful? And it was supremely helpful in helping me understand my own blind spots as I was doing planning for my organization. And again, this is just an example of we're going to become managers of AI. And so there will be no IC, as we term it today. We're going to be managing a fleet of AI agents that's helping us. And I think that's a fundamental shift that it's really interesting. We talked to a wide variety of companies that are at totally different areas of the AI adoption curve. And going back to that boomer point, all the companies that we talk to self-select to be at an earlier part of that curve, an adoption curve. But they have employee bases that are all over. And they are thinking through, how do I get some of the folks that aren't paying attention, either purposefully or not purposefully, to pay attention and figure out how to use AI. Otherwise, they are worried about falling behind in aggregate in their organization. Even if they care about it, they want to make sure that their organization is pushing forward and thinking about how to unlock AI in their everyday work.
Yeah, because as soon as Claude Sonnet, I think 4 came out, that was like the moment where we're like, oh, it's good now. And now there's like this mad race, like a mental model. I agree. And also, like, if you use AI effectively, like more as like a thought partner and like a way to like complete like jobs. So like, to use your email example, like you doing it as a human, unless it's like your core responsibility, there's not like intrinsic value in you doing that task manually with like your own like brain power, burning calories on that. It's just like this admin task that's really low value, but like high leverage if you get the writing and tone right. And like, what do most people do to get like better? Like before AI, it's like, I want to be better at writing like customer service emails. You ever read a book about writing, maybe like specific to customer service emails, to be like more precise and informative, and not how not to ramble and like avoid adverbs? Like that's like a heuristic framework you're like accomplishing, and AI is really good at heuristics. And so instead of like learning how to like do AI, it's the I really like the ICs versus managers analogy that I brought up, because I actually just took like a sick day today, because if you use AI very, very well, we talk about the computer being like the bicycle of the mind. I feel like with AI, the computer is like the Ducati for the mind. Like you actually burn more brain calories coordinating all of this work, and you're able to like context switch and like keep things moving, that I was like so burnt out yesterday that I'm just gonna do the podcast. I'm just gonna take some PTO, because I can't think anymore, because it pushed me so hard to like think harder and faster. And I think everyone watches like Netflix and or like TV shows, like political intrigue shows. And really, at the end of the day, like, agents have always existed. The cost just got cheaper. Like you look at like I'm just watching a show right now, like where there's like a prime minister and he has his chief of staff right next to him, and he's just telling him like, give me the contact info for this person, blah blah blah. And like there's always these agentic human roles where like the executive doesn't get it. Like they have people to get them what they need to brief them, and then their job is to make decisions, execute, allocate capital, resources, time to solve problems. Would you say so? Like, is that what you mean by like IC versus management? Like that's the core distinction, is like your job's not to like collect the things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I'll give you an example from my own personal life where I use a lot of the products that are out there to run my diet and run my exercise program, right? So what did that look like, to build on your executive point? What did that look like 10 years ago, right? What that would look like is I need to have a personal nutritionist that follows me around every meal. I need to have a personal trainer that is sitting there and watching every one of my exercises and helping me figure out what do I need to eat before my exercise, that type of stuff. That existed, but it was only something that was available to multimillionaires and billionaires. I have a nutritionist that follows me everywhere. I have a I have a workout specialist that follows me everywhere and watches every one of my workouts and helps me get better. And in a way, I've now become a manager of that nutritionist, of that exercise specialist in my everyday life. And so you made an interesting point where now it's gotten a lot cheaper because with AI, I would add to that point to say it's also gotten a lot faster, right? And so in the past, let's go back to that nutritionist, right? And I'm like, okay, great. I need to figure out a way to finish my macros for the day with some healthy fats and yada based on what's in my fridge. It would take the nutritionist probably 15 minutes to figure out what should I eat. It takes AI about 20 seconds to figure that out. And I think the combination of both the cost reduction and speed improvement is opening up so many new use cases, and that we're all going to become managers of a fleet of AI agents in our lives as we move forward, not only in our professional life, but also in our personal one as well.
So for the person that's listening, how would you, like, let's say that you're doing a coaching call or you're coaching one of your direct reports into thinking this way, right? Because when I hear like, oh, you're gonna be a manager of a fleet of AI, like you tell that to like a designer, it's like, I don't know, like I never planned on becoming a manager. Like I don't know what that means. Like I never read books about management. Like maybe like what's that like first step on how to like coach someone? Like what would you say to like start like building that mental model?
Yeah. I think probably about a year ago, I came up around a heuristic that really helped me, which is anytime that I get stuck, right? I have a bad habit, right? Anytime I get stuck, I context switch to something else. And then what's interesting is it lets my mind process. And by the time I come back, maybe I know how to move forward. But it also can create, I'll just forget to do it. And then I just move on and I don't get back to that thing. What I realized was anytime I get stuck, don't context switch. Pull up AI and tell them what you're doing and where you feel stuck. And that was such a massive unlock for me. All right. Started doing that at work. Okay. Here's a message. Maybe I'm just like, it's the end of the day and I'm losing brain cycles to be able to respond effectively. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's just describe the situation to you.com or whatever it might be, and then have them help me through this situation. And that was so massively effective that it became this heuristic that I used everywhere, which is if I'm getting stuck, if I don't know the way forward, just ask AI, right? And then that really started to create this pattern in my brain around long run tasks that are more effective if I will work in conjunction with AI on them, and both in professional life and personal life. And so to somebody, and that is actually what I coach people today, right? Which is you can't just be like, here's a bunch of AI, go figure it out. That's rarely going to lead to the type of productivity gains that the world is now talking about. I think that the best way to do it is when you feel stuck, try to explain what you're working on and what you feel stuck about to AI. And more than likely, I suspect that it will help you get unstuck in a way that is so interesting that it's going to burn new pathways in your mind around, okay, this is what I should be doing when I get stuck, and a way to increase my productivity.
Yeah, the and that right there is why when I really lean into like AI in my workflows, like my brain is like fried
Yeah.
in like a matter of 2 hours because you're pushing through that block. Like in the past, it's like, okay, I'll worry about it later. And if you do get back to it, it's 2 days later and like you've had time to like take a break,
Yeah.
but you've lost 2 days of opportunity cost to maybe come to a conclusion on that task the next day or that same day. And just going, yeah, like whenever I just go to AI and I'm like, no, let me help me think through this. Like, I have a Gemini gem that's coded to bully me, like really make sure my words are precise and be like, no, what do
Mhm.
you mean by this? And oh my God, like my head, like sometimes I'm just like, shut up, Claude, and I'll close it because I can't physically answer the questions. And then I like really hit like bedrock on like where my limits are. And then I could take the break to like
Yeah.
process, man, that's a really good question. I don't know. I need to go figure that out. But because I pushed through, I have 2 extra days to close the loop that I
Yeah.
would have like wasted in the past.
That's right. I think that there's also, I start to see a little bit of the downsides to this as well. Right? A lot of the publicly available tools are still optimizing for like traditional growth metrics, like around retention and activation and usage. So it's okay. I'm trying to figure out how to write this great email, and then it helps me. But then the last line is, "Do you want me to make it even better and shorten this into 3 sentences?" And that's, to be blunt, is annoying, right? Because it's you can see the growth loop that they're trying to enable, but that's counter to the productivity loop that's actually bringing me back. And so I think what's going to be interesting is as these companies, I think a lot of the companies are treating these things as growth loops, which is somewhat natural. Growth and engagement drive retention, which is ultimately their goal. But they're applying like social media like approaches to productivity tools. And it would be like if Excel was like, here's the answer, but if you use this formula, I'm going to get you something even better. That'd be pretty annoying pretty quickly inside Excel. And so I think that's an interesting mix between bringing some of these social media growth tricks to productivity tools, and to see the evolution of that over the next few years is going to be interesting as well.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, if you're retaining them and they're paying the subscription, like there's a financial cap to like what they can do. Maybe the goal to keep them chatting is to burn up their token, so they have to upgrade. But like those limits are pretty high, and like most casual users don't hit like the base token limits,
Yeah.
anyways. And so like there's no point in like optimizing for that. But so it like a tool is like, hey, as long as they're paying for it, like we should be looking at like signals of preventing churn rather than engagement, because like the real value is that they can get their job done and put you down and they feel
Yeah.
happy that you're there rather, and
Yeah.
they'll miss you when you're gone rather than, wow, I spent all my time in this.
Yeah. What I suspect will happen is that some degree of that growth hacking is useful to help you find personal product fit with whatever, with ChatGPT or whatever it might be. But then after, to your point, that there's a point at which you're a power user, you're unlikely to churn. And some of those growth hacking tactics actually become annoying and actually create potential for churn as well. And that you'll start to see that drop off as they see you becoming a power user. That's what I suspect will be the right long-term answer here. But I think there's like a broader sense of what are the other negatives around this technology. We've talked a little bit about the growth hacking here. I also think that I think a lot about, is this something that is net additive to me, or am I dulling my brain's executive capacity? And that's something that I think about a lot. What's interesting is, especially in the personal world, I'll go back to that nutritionist example. Sometimes the feedback is just wonky. It's just off. And yesterday I followed some of the advice that my nutritionist agent was giving me. And halfway through the day, I was like feeling lightheaded, and I was like, okay, look, I just need to eat something. And so it's interesting that I think that especially in the personal world, or use cases where you're not paying a company a bunch of money to create a custom built solution, you've got to like be aware of the hallucinatory aspects, its lack of full context, and continue to think independently of what it's giving you. But in many ways, that is still like a manager, right? As a manager, I trust the people that work on my team, but I also have to maintain an independent perspective to 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 help them when they're going off the rails, or to help them see a new path forward. And so it's an interesting balance around, how much do I trust this? How much do I need to maintain my own independent thought? And is it ultimately, I am always wondering, is it dulling my brain's capacity to do some type of higher level thinking? Or is it simply enabling my brain to do more higher level thinking and taking away some of the everyday complexities off of my brain?
You just sparked like a memory of something I read in a book. There's like several definitions of knowledge in the Greek language. A couple of them are that I think are applicable here is that there's like tactile knowledge, like craft knowledge, like you can do the thing. And it's really hard to have like mastery over one skill, right? To be like so good at and be able to repeat results. The sushi chef Jiro, that's one like tactile knowledge. Like he could taste
Yeah.
sushi and be like, "Oh, cut the sashimi like thinner or something to make this taste better." And then there's knowledge of something, like of it, like YouTube knowledge. Like you develop like a vocabulary. You're more well read, and you're able to take a lot of different sources and think systematically of different variables, and then make those like abductions, which are like those draw the unseen connections between things to look for like the opportunities. And I feel like we have more time to do that. And then actually, the people that are like autodidacts and love to just study a bunch of random stuff and don't like staying in their lane, I would say I'm like one of those people. I feel like this AI age has really rewarded people like me that I'm like, actually, what's like the financial situation, like the economics of this product?
Uh-huh.
And in the past, it's like I wouldn't be able. I'd have to get the skill set, take a course, understand how to like read the financials to get the answer to my question, or depend on someone else, like a coworker, to get
Yeah.
me not a close enough answer. And it's a 2-week turnaround. And but now it's, hey, I can map out, okay, what are the questions I need answered about this problem? Run AI agents to get me like the objective facts about those things, and then I could spend more time puttering and thinking about that. I feel like that's what I spent more time doing. It's like the goal of having more time is not to do more of the old way of working. It might be like you're still focusing on one thing, but like you're spending more time chewing on and digesting the evidence more is what I found. So like, how do you spend time now?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, I've been lucky over the years to help many leaders and ICs grow from a junior IC to a senior leader, right? And I feel that there are some people that just get it, right? Okay, great. I know they understand how to delegate, they understand how to trust and verify, and it allows them to say, okay, great. I spend less time on doing more of what I already know how to do, and I can open up more room for strategic thought or higher level focus for the company. But you have other leaders where that switch is difficult. They know how to be a really good IC and they can manage ICs really well, but they struggle with saying, now I'm managing the IC, I can do something else with my time. And for some people, it's an inflection point that they really need to work on. And for other people, it comes naturally. And I think that you're going to see something similar here, which is some people will use the time that they get back with AI to just do more of what they already know. And that's going to be fine. That totally makes sense. But you're going to have other people that are able to, I sometimes think about Maslow's hierarchies, right? Some people that are able to, okay, great, I got shelter and food under control. Now I can go to self-actualization, right? As an example. Some people will take that turn a little bit more naturally. When I think about myself, I feel somewhat in between. And where the time that I get back, sometimes I'm using it to do more of the same. And sometimes I'm using it to say, actually, you know what? I can actually do something different with my time. I can spend more time with customers. And so I talk to sales and say, hey, put me on more trips, right? That's not an obvious connection to make though, with saying, hey, I'm getting more time back so I can actually go fly on more customer trips with the sales team. But one day I thought about it and I was like, actually, I'm able to do a little bit more and I want to change how I'm spending my time. But that's an active choice you have to make about, I'm going to change the way I spend my time with that 20% productivity gain or whatever it might be, as opposed to something that momentum will naturally lead you to as well.
Yeah, the point you're touching on is like what's going to differentiate, because I mean it's inevitable, everyone's going to become managers. It's just what type of manager you're going to become, and that depends on like how much agency that you demonstrate as an individual. And I think you're one of the benefits of of this podcast is I get to talk to people that are ahead of me in their careers. I want you to respond to this like statement. I'm just going to say this one liner, and then I'll see like how you interpret it. Everyone's going to become managers, but most of them are going to just become middle managers, and only a few are going to become executives.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. What I would add is that there's nothing wrong with that, right? There are
Yeah.
exceptional middle managers at, I spend a lot of time at Google. There's exceptional middle managers
Yeah.
that that's what they love to do. That's what they're good at. And that is great. And then there are exceptional middle managers that graduate naturally to be exceptional executives. And that is good as well, right? I don't think that there's a right answer. Just like going back to Maslow's hierarchy, you may focus on shelter and food your whole life. There's nothing wrong with that. And then there's folks that say, great, I got shelter and food under control. I can spend time on self-actualization. There's nothing wrong with that either. And so I think that just like everybody will take their own path, I don't think that AI is any different in that particular way. It gives more room. It's going to give people time to do other things, whether that's more of the same or whether that allows them to move into a different operating mode, right? There's nothing wrong with either outcome. I think that at the end of the day, it's good for society overall.
Yeah. So to someone that's listening, it's like, it's your choice, right? Like, we still need people that care about the craft, the details, and like that, I would say like middle manager, like coordinator role of like specific scopes of work makes total sense. And then if you are someone that tends to have gotten your hand slapped in the past for maybe being too strategic when that's not where you are on the org chart, if you, this gives you an opportunity to be more strategic without getting penalized because of you're not like, it's not as, it's easier to spend more time on that because you're able to stay on top of like your core obligations. Like, what's your definition between like a middle manager and executive? Because like what you described, like you came to a conclusion that you used your judgment and you said, I need to be on more sales calls. Like you
Mhm.
thought about it. That sounds like executive behavior.
Mhm. Let's talk about what middle managers and executives have in common. I'm a
Yeah.
product manager by training, so I look at things through that lens, right?
Yeah.
Both middle managers and executives focus on three things, more or less: product strategy, people management, and execution. And the difference that I see is middle management will focus more on people management and execution. And those that are on the executive path will have a natural pull towards being more strategic. And neither are wrong. I want to emphasize that, right? The right or wrong here. It's just what makes sense for you. I think oftentimes society rewards the executive. I think that's like a false duality, right? A false choice, really. I think that companies and society need people at all parts of the ladder. To go back to your craftsmen, we're going to need and continue to always need people that focus on the craft. We're going to need and always need people that are in middle management, and we're going to always need executives as well. But I think going back to the heart of your question, I think that taking that more strategic approach is what separates a middle manager from an executive. I liked your analogy, which was nobody told me that I should spend more time with the sales team, right? But what I noted was, first of all, sales likes having product on road trips with them, right? It helps customer conversations. But the other part of it was it helps me, right? It helps me build my worldview, what my roadmap should be, what are customers' pain points when you get up in front of them and have to really talk to them about where they're finding pain and where they're finding opportunity. And it was a decision I made about this is where I want to spend my time moving forward, as opposed to simply doing more execution, simply doing more people management. It's very important and the foundation of what I do, but more of that isn't necessarily better for me, my team, or the company.
Yeah. And I like how you're hitting home. Like, there's nothing wrong with either. I mean, you think about Johnny Ive didn't do strategy. He was a people manager. Like
Mhm.
he managed and directed work of a team. And then Steve gave him everything he needed to like radically focus. Like Steve's like, I need a personal desktop computer. I need a professional desktop computer. And like that was like the prompt. Like Johnny wasn't then Johnny knew how to get the best work out of his
Yeah,
team to
yeah,
move things forward. And you kind of need that like relationship. Like I would say that like maybe in the product trio model, like there's a lot of discussions about like, oh, like we're going to just like flatten the trio model. Like we are, it could be just like a PM and engineer or just a designer and an engineer. And what I found, because what I like, that it's tempting to think that way, but it almost gives like the PM designer relationship an opportunity to really like lean into kind of like hopefully like ideal situation, a similar relationship to Steve and Johnny,
That's right.
where the PM is like, no, I am deploying my agents to get the best context and have like the most well reasoned focus of like what to zero in and focus on
Yeah.
and go more horizontal, which the trade off is you can't go vertical. You can't like dictate designs anymore, but that's fine. If you're confident in your evidence and like your strategic focus as a PM, then the designer can now go more horizontal and handle more of how are we going to do this? Like, how are we going to break up the work? How are we going to iterate
Yeah.
based off that strategic focus? And how do I like deploy my agents? Or if I'm a design lead, like maybe I have designers that are resourced to me as well. And it's like, how do I break up the work and split the work tactically across multiple designers? Whereas pre AI, it was like this vertical like team structure where the PM has like such little scope and time, and it's like kind of and the anti pattern is like dictating down like just push the team to like ship stuff.
Yeah.
But now the PM could have enough information to know which balls to drop now,
Yeah.
and they could like not be as urgent. Like I mean, be urgent, but I guess not as frantic.
Yeah. I think there's so much to that. You're absolutely right. Whenever I hear, oh, AI means that one leg of the triad isn't necessary anymore. That is maybe you don't need PMs anymore because you've got Gong, and Gong can understand all the customer feedback and basically prioritize and write PRDs. I think that when I hear that, it's people that are thinking about AI as more of the same as opposed to being able to level up. You're right. If the PM's job is just write PRDs all day long, perhaps that actually will become somewhat antiquated over time. But what's missing there is the opportunity for the PM to jump up a level, like we've been talking about here, right? And spend less time writing PRDs and more time upfront with customers, more time with UX around understanding like what is the information flow here? How could we simplify, radically simplify, and being able to spend more time higher up the thought hierarchy and less time on the basics, right, of PRD writing or whatever it might be. And so a lot of when I hear, oh, the triad might be changing over the next few years, I think that's absolutely right. The relationship within the triad will change, right? And I think it will be less a PRD. Can you give me a mock? And more thinking about the next level of at a deeper level about what are the problems that the customers are facing? What are the problems in the user experience or interaction design? Or what are the architectural limitations of what we're doing? I think that a lot of the basics that we spend a lot of time on today we'll spend a little bit less time on, opening up room for a different type of discussion within that triad.
Yeah, and it's like the answer to the like, oh, we could have like just two people or one person make shipping products. The answer is like yes and no. Yes, you could do that. Like you could do more. Like I love how you said like more of the same.
Yeah.
Like you could do web 2.0 CRUD based SaaS with less people. Is there any alpha in
That's
that
right.
when
Yeah.
another company is keeping the same personnel but like expanding their accountability?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good way to put it. That will improve your efficiency. It's unlikely to improve your alpha, right? And is that companies will take both routes. Some companies will say, great, efficiency is what matters to us. Other companies will say the alpha is what matters to us. And I think it'll be an interesting few years to see what argument nets out as being more effective. But I do think companies that are more focused on efficiency as opposed to alpha now have a route to further their efficiency goals. It may be diminishing return on investment, but that's an argument that's been present for as long as software development or any type of business has been present. If you focus solely on efficiency, you're going to get a competitor is going to come in and displace you. That is, a competitor is more focused on value. And maybe that's okay. Every company is optimizing for something different. And I think AI doesn't change that. It just gives new tools to create those optimizations.
Yeah, and it totally depends on the industry and the time and history. Like one of the rabbit holes I'm going down right now, knowing that like the CRUD based software is getting cheaper to do, right? But it's not exactly where customers are going to be expecting their software to be doing. So it's not really like a good strategically sound path to go down is to do more of the same, like CRUD based pixel flipping bit flipping software. And so I've been actually reading a lot of like David Ogilvy and like advertising because like golden age of Madison Avenue, the cost of entry into like consumer goods was so high that you could like have kind of like this, this small group of people and like Madison Avenue influencing what people buy because it costs so much to create like a physical consumer good. Now the cost to even get into like starting your own clothing line or even hardware. I had a guest that's talking about how you could order like from China, like one like electrical component from China now. Like you don't have to do bulk orders anymore to like build your own iPhone.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then Madison Avenue became less powerful as like operational and cost of goods sold went down. That now there's so many shoe brands, and so now it's more about like branding and trust or anything like that. And that, but software was still like, oh, if you're well funded enough, you could do the whole like Madison Avenue. Like we're so big, who else would you go to? And I feel like now software is starting to become like, how hard is it to get start like a clothing line? It's like how hard is it to
Mhm.
start a SaaS business now?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like maybe you could walk me through like how are you organizing your teams because you own the whole like horizontal stack of job families based off what your LinkedIn says. Like what have you like changed in like topology and like expectations, job recs to respond to this? That like hey, like it's everyone's gonna be like it's so cheap to do software companies now, but like how do we change this, like how you incentives, how do you maybe like where you raise the bar, where have you like lowered the bar based off of like what matters now?
That's a good question. I think what's really changed is you got to be laser sharp about where you can really add value versus what's being rapidly commoditized. And I think it's less about, I think what I would say is that what we've seen at U.com is that there's a continuous focus on where is the value really being created versus where will the value be rapidly commoditized. And to your point, I think that enterprise SaaS is going to go through a fundamental change because you no longer have to say, I have to deal with this software because it's the right software, but it doesn't work just perfectly for me. Now you could probably, for many things, you could potentially create your own tool pretty quickly. Right. And so a lot of what we think about inside is where is the right value being created, right? And what is really difficult to do that is defensible. And a lot of I think it does. I think it does change how you hire, in that you want people that are able to think along that strategic line more so than here's this cool feature I want to build. The cool feature, the customer might be able to replicate it themselves in a way that's even more fit for them. It's more about where is there a compounding advantage? Where is there a value creation that will be hard to commoditize? And that's a lot of what I think about at the company. That's a lot of what I try to help my team think about as well, which is where's that compounding advantage that creates value for the customer and also creates potentially a competitive mode for us as well.
Do you maybe do you budget like here's like a thought like maybe a thought experiment to frame my question. Um, where have you like loosened up things, right? Like, because the answer isn't always like, oh, we have all this technology now, let's optimize and maximize the optimizations and like be more efficient. I think we have the luxury now. It's where we could choose where to be like less efficient, because like that's a lot like creative thinking doesn't isn't like a lot of creative work is more about mulling over, not like it's messy. And so in the past, like the discovery phase, because of how hard it was and expensive it is to keep engineering teams idle before
Mhm.
AI, is you
Yeah.
time box discovery, and it's arbitrary and it's move faster. We need to ship something because we're burning cash,
Yeah.
not like shipping value, but like the like companies like Nintendo could like wait, like they're so fiscally secure that they could wait 5 years to get everything right. But most companies don't
Yeah.
have that luxury. Do you see yourself actually like loosening up? Like you can have some more agency on how long you spend on discovery, but I'm not going to like pressure, like I know what's possible with AI to spend more time on this, because once you like get the right idea, execution is just typing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see yourself doing that more, like, or anything else that you're loosening up?
To be transparent, I don't think we're loosening up. I
Okay.
think what's actually happening is because you're still engineering teams are still expensive to leave idle, and that time
Yeah.
boxing is important not only because you can research forever, and but also because a bias towards action, especially in this market, is going to be generally helpful. A bias towards action helps you learn faster. I think what's different though is that while that time box remains, let's talk about a time box from 15 years ago versus a time box now. A time 15 years ago looked like, okay, I think this is the right problem to solve. Let me go talk to 50 potential users in different user segments. Let me analyze everything that they're saying, and I will use that to build a PRD that I think will hit all these points, and I'll work with UX and I'll work with engineering to put something out there. Fundamentally, that isn't changing. But what's changing is think about where you're spending time there. Doing those 50 user research studies, understanding the signal between those 50 user research studies, that used to take a long time. And now where AI is helping us is that signal extraction from those 50 user studies is happening much faster. And so what that creates is, in essence, it creates more time to do some of that creative visioning because you're spending less time on doing the signal extraction part of it. And so I think that time box and bias to action and the core steps that are necessary hasn't changed, but the allotment inside that time box to creative thought has changed because of some of the tools that are now available to us.
Yeah, like, and you could say that it's still 2 weeks both scenarios. In today's scenario, you've significantly de-risked what you're going to release. Like
Yeah.
you've really stacked the deck in your favor in scenario
Yeah.
two, because what I've seen is like it takes 2 weeks just to get maybe the PRD, and then the creative visioning comes up as like phantom costs as like engineers have questions during development,
Yeah.
and then there's all this like churn and thrashing, and then your final solution doesn't look the way it should be.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you look at all parts of that funnel, Gong helps me extract customer signal better, right?
Yeah.
Variety of analytics, AI optimized analytics tools help me understand user behavior quantitatively better. A variety of user testing tools now help me extract user research signal faster and help with prototyping, right? So all of the same components still exist in creating a solid product, but I think the advent of AI means that we have more time for creative exploration because the signal generation and the mock creation, whatever it might be, is becoming more optimized with some of the tools that are now coming out.
Okay. I'll tap this thread and then I'll hand it to you to like close the loop on this, take us home. I'm just gonna like plus one. I really like what you said about the you. I guess in the economy of your team, you've lowered like the value of how impressive it is to come up with signal, like a report about signal. It's like, no, that's easy now. So like I have devalued the praise currency, and now I want to see you doing more like experiments based off that signal. And
Right.
like that's how I coach people with when I'm using AI. Like I shamelessly like, hey, here's a draft I made with Gemini. I just dump context into it. Let's critique the draft. And they're like, how do we know like this is accurate? And I'm like, well, it's up to us to like verify and like go line by line and like review the work and like find out like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that's true. And then like run another query with AI. But like all I need is signal. I don't need statistical like relevant. I just need enough to be like, that's interesting. Let's make a prototype about that. And then you get like several at bats of prototyping rather than like the historical 1 or 2 or 0 to
Right.
even like run an experiment. So I just want to say like I really like what you said is like getting single is cheaper now. So like
Mhm.
that's not as impressive anymore. So maybe a listener take that as a sign that like maybe that's something you should be optimizing for if you're like trying to impress your boss. Like actually make it look cheap. Like get a ton of singles. Show that you're able to generate reports like pretty fast and be
Yeah.
like, hey, here's the things I found. This is what I'm going to do. Do you feel like there's anything that hasn't been said that should be said before we sign off?
No, I think it's been a good discussion. I think that really everybody knows we're on a path to there's radical change coming, right? And what I would just urge folks to do is go back to that thought experiment I mentioned. The next time that you feel stuck in your day-to-day job or even in your personal life, try turning to AI to understand, here's where I'm stuck, right? Here's what's going on. And I think that is the most natural and organic path to start to see how AI can improve and make your own life more and more productive over time.
Thank you so much. How do you want people to reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is always great. You'll find me on LinkedIn. If you type in my name and you.com, you'll find my profile pretty easily there. I would love to hear from folks, whether they just want to talk shop a little bit like we've been doing today, or whether you.com could help them, right? We've built a great team that we're hiring, first of all. And also if you've got a tough problem in your world and you're an enterprise customer, we'd love to see if we could actually help you as well.
Cool. I'll make sure those are all in the show notes and the careers page as well. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, listener, thanks again for listening to The Way of Product. As we power down today's session on the fusion of creativity and technology, let's solidify the energy you've gotten from our dialogue today. If you've gleaned insights or strategies that could turbocharge your projects, I have a small but powerful ask. Swing by the platform where you're hearing this and leave a review. Think of it as your digital high five to us. It's a fuel that propels this content to more creative technologists like you, amplifying the impact of the shared knowledge. So until our next interview, keep pioneering and pushing the envelope. Thanks again for lending your ears and your imagination to our community. Catch you on the next download.